focuses on playing with the lens, and then keep that back shoulder level or slightly lower. If you want power and presence, call that something else other than masculine, because it's a dumb thing to call it anyway. Because plenty of women look fantastic in that pose, and they look sexy and beautiful and feminine, and they don't look masculine. It's a dumb thing to call it. Traditionally masculine poses. Just keep that shoulders level, or the closer shoulder to the camera slightly above, and then you'll always have a more powerful pose. If you want to dip a little bit, I never go like this. But if you dip a little bit, and then you tilt the head to that camera shoulder, just give a little dip, that's a wonderful pose for like a caretaker or something more sympathetic. And that's like something
caregiver.
Like the caregiver pose. Absolutely.
A caretaker is a funeral.
Well, they could probably pose that way too if they want.
There's some sympathy there.
Medical caregiver. What if someone who takes care of chinchillas? Huh? They probably are very sympathetic. They're very fuzzy, lovable animals. Caregiver, thank you. Medical caregiver pose. You can do like that, like I'm listening, I'm hearing about your problems, okay? And if you really want to go into some, like, what's posing feminine, what's posing masculine, does the person look good? Have you flattered their features? And that's it. So it's going to be the shoulders, which one's higher, which one's lower, and which way the head is tilted. And that's going to be the control of the image psychologically on this 8% of the body. If you've got your camera shoulder a little bit lower, and your head is tilted to that lower shoulder, this way, okay? Good. And then forward. And that's going to be a fairly strong pose, right? But they're all leaning into it. If you go back the other way, and then tilt the head that way, okay, now it's like a kind of a feminine pose, like that. So typically the rule of thumb is, if the camera is tilted, your head is tilted towards the shoulder that's closer to the camera, that's typically going to be a more caregiver-friendly pose. If you tilt the head away from the camera, that's going to be a little more of that boxer stance, that more protective, that more masculine, that more powerful. It's also perfectly acceptable to shoot somebody straight the hell on if they look good that way. Okay, so it's all going to be, look at your person, analyze what their strengths and weaknesses are, and pose for them. Don't do anything by rote. Use your skills and make them look good. And I do it a little differently with everybody, using the rules that try to make people look good, and I know what each movement suggests to the viewer. And that's what I'm trying to do. Know what they do for a living and let that weigh in on your decision on how to pose them. And temper that against what they look like and how to make them look their best. What do I do with their hands? I do not photograph them. I know. Most of the time, if you have, let's say, for example, a woman in a dress that doesn't have pockets, although many do, praise Allah, many have pockets now, so I no longer have to hold my wife's chapstick. That's fantastic. But if they don't, with women, I like to get the arms away from the body, so they're not sitting on the body. So one of the things I'll normally do is I will just have them do just one of those. That's it. And just to give the arms a little raise off the body, because if they're close against the body, they can look wider than they are, especially if they've got a dress that's sleeveless. You can always do the party sub trick, where you can make them pretend they're holding a 6-foot party sub, and that activates the muscles in the arms and makes their arms look skinny. Because all you're photographing from here up. So just say, I want you to pretend like you're holding a 6-foot long party sub, and they go, what? And you go, it's going to make your arms look badass. And they go, yep. Now do it. Okay? There's all kinds of stuff. I could spend a day just doing on posing refinement. Just remember, make somebody look good, flatter the good features, and remember what the purpose of the image is and what they do for a living when you photograph them, and what you're trying to say.
If they have an eye that may cross or
If somebody's got something that is a very obvious aberration, like I photographed a guy a couple weeks ago who had one of his eyelids was like halfway closed. They were the same size and everything.
This doesn't change.
Right, it doesn't change.
So, how would you do this?
I will ask you. I will straight up, if I notice that about somebody, I will ask them. I'll say, I noticed that you have one eye that's slightly different than the other, and I'd like to flatter you. Tell me how you like to be photographed. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? You're going to pretend somebody doesn't have a mole? Or somebody's eye is not?
They don't know.
What side do you love your eye patch? Do you like to face the camera? You know, like, people know, and as long as you're respectful, and they're going to appreciate the crap out of it. They really, really are. You know? You go, okay, so I noticed that you're kind of jowly. You know, it's not the same thing. You got something that's definitely some kind of a disability or an aberration, you can ask them about it. And that's, as long as you're not uncomfortable, they won't be. And I wouldn't do it loudly in front of other people. I go up to them and speak to them quietly and say, hey, I noticed one of your eyelids is a little lower than the other, and I want to photograph you in the best way that's going to make you happy. So tell me what you've done in the past that you've liked. And a lot of times they'll just go, it's just the way I am, don't worry about it, shoot whatever you want. And sometimes they'll go, actually I really like to face the camera with this side, the good eye. And that's not convention, but that's what they like, and so I'm going to please the client.
And if they don't know, what would you defer to as a photographer?
I would probably just shoot them straight on, or I try to minimize the defect. But if I have an eye that's normal, but otherwise normal, but smaller, or appears smaller, I would bring it closer to the camera and try to even it out if I could.
So this one, because this one won't go.
Right.
So I would put this one closer to the
You can shoot
Honestly, I would probably shoot you in the way that your eyes look like they're in the same direction, so I'd probably shoot you straight on.
straight on. Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably just shoot you straight on. Yeah.
Staying with the eyes, can you talk about pupil placement? Sometimes you see other people's work or other photographers that haven't been through one of your classes, and they'll bury the pupil like really down in the corner and stuff.
Did you just answer your own question?
Can you comment on that?
I like to. That's why I have people shoot. Mostly their faces are straight to the camera in situations like this. I'm shooting for the most general, everybody's going to like it thing in the world. And when I'm shooting volume, so pupils and stuff, irises are in the center of the
A
eye.
little bit white
I don't like get out a tape measure and make sure it's like 50-50,
no.
but I get it as close as I can. I would prefer not to have them like this. But sometimes if somebody's got like some wacky notion that this is the only side of their face they want photographed from, who am I to destroy their delusion? I just do what they want and send them on their way. You know, I really don't care. Like I just want them to be happy with the picture more than I need to be happy with the picture because my business is not
About you.
about me. That's right. Exactly. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Can you explain again a little bit of the white balance when you did that?
Oh, sure. I think when you're shooting volume and want consistent skin tones and results, best thing to do is to use some kind of gray card or color checker. And the one that I use is called the X-Rite Passport Color Checker. This one is fairly expensive as far as they go. I think it's about $80, but it also comes with software that plugs into Lightroom that you can create custom color profiles, which is really cool. They just came out with a Color Checker Passport 2, so you might be able to snap these up for half price on eBay or whatever. The reason I like these is because I usually only use the gray card, but it also has all these other colors that you could make profiles for on the other side. I like it because if you just have a piece of gray card or even a pop-up reflector with it, those fade pretty badly over time. This is closed and protected from the elements, so that gray stays true color quite a lot longer, and it also fits in my pocket very easily. So, and it's really durable because it's hard plastic. So I would use that to create a custom white balance for at the beginning, and I won't change that white balance the entire shoot.
So my question, I'm sorry, I didn't specify. What was that process that you did that?
Right, how to do that? Okay. What you do is you set the camera to auto. First of all, you need to get your exposure, because if this is over or underexposed, it's going to change the color. So use that light meter or whatever and get your exposure correct so that this is actually gray and not white or black. And then once your exposure is dead on, then you go to this and you take a picture of it like so, and you make your camera focus on it, and you shoot it at auto white balance. And then you go into your camera and you select custom white balance, and it will ask you which picture that you have just taken would you like to use as the custom white balance. You pick this, and you reset it to the flower, and you're done. That's it. And I'm sure that there are many YouTube videos on the same subject, but it's super simple. Don't be intimidated. You'll do it once. You'll be like, that's what, I haven't been doing this the whole time? Yeah.
You talked about the very tall people that came and then you had to sit them down because you didn't have enough roof or ceiling
Ceiling height
space.
wasn't there, yeah.
What about somebody that is short like me? Like, do I have to sit them down or would you use a stool?
One of my
you
very
shoot
good
up to
friends is
them?
one of the best headshot photographers I know. She's 4'11", and she has a step stool. She works on a step stool. Kelly, who works for me, she's 5'3", and she stands on my Pelican case to take pictures. So you're going to find it a lot easier to add some height to you. And yeah, I know it's kind of a disability, it's a cross to bear, but a little portable light step stool would do you wonders, you know, so that you're not shooting up anybody's nose. So that's just, but
I
again,
haven't had anyone that tall, but
live
now
your,
I'm like,
you,
maybe
if you
aware
do,
of that.
you'll be shooting the bottom of their neck. Step stool, highly recommended. Yeah.
Can you do a volume headshot and 3/4 of full length setup? Or is that not something you can do?
You mean you want me to do that now, or you asking me if I can do it at all?
You can do it. Is it possible? With
Oh yeah, probably not with that background. But if the client, I have had many situations where the client wants to provide a headshot and a 3/4 length shot. I just use seamless paper or a larger background, and absolutely all it is. If you can pose somebody for a 3/4 shot, zoom in and you got a headshot. There's not a lot you have to
don't
change.
need the eye lights.
I would probably light it differently. and I would make sure that the client's going to give me enough space in the shooting area. Because if they don't give me enough space to shoot a 3/4 length, I can't do it. And so in that case, I would probably use a fill light, a second light as fill instead of an eye lighter as fill. Something behind me or something on the other side like this. Yeah, probably. Okay. Yeah.
What's the minimum size you would require to work with it? A room size?
Like this setup? I mean, I could do this setup.
Like with a client and they say, well,
I say I need 8 foot by 10 foot of uninterrupted space at minimum, and that also will preclude certain things like I can't do a white background in that distance. I need more. Or I could do a white background and I shoot on an unlit white background and I just extract them all and add in white myself later.
Do you do a green screen?
No, I don't. Nothing wrong with green screen. It's perfectly fine. I think it's a better tool for video people who need to reduce chroma key. But if you have the right amount of space, it's awesome. But you also have to light a green screen pretty evenly. And so you can't just not light it, and half of it's a stop darker than the other half. So if you light it evenly, it'll come out faster than anything, but if you don't have the space between the subject and the background, you're going to get a green cast all the way around them, and believe me, that doesn't come off easy no matter how good Photoshop gets so far. So just keep that in mind. Most of the time when I'm shooting, in order to extract the image later, which I do a lot, I will shoot on an unlit white background most of the time, and that seems to work with a little bit of hair light for when somebody comes in and their hair's super dark and I need more detail in it, but mostly an unlit white background. And I don't do the extraction myself, I send it off. Hughes does the extractions on headshots for 50 cents.
I use it for 150 I did. Just sent it off, get back.
50 cents, and it will be better. It will be better than if you tried to do it yourself all day long. I promise. Hughes, 50 cents headshot extraction. So we just switched to them for that. From retouchup.com. I still use retouchup, but I can't. It's $1.50 versus 50 cents. You can't pass that up. So,
did you list on your PDF the lighting equipment that's over there?
no, but if you go to Arlington, they have the list of my equipment, and they can sell you anything that I use. And they will be in the trade show. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then I really have to pack up and have a beer. Okay.
Do you usually shoot them standing?
That's a good question. It really depends on the job. There's a circumstance where sitting, I recommend standing is a little faster, but always have a stool anyway. Again, you don't know who's going to come up. Somebody who's disabled, mobility issues, somebody who's 8 feet tall. Just always have a stool ready to go, just in case. Yeah.
Facial analysis.
Okay. Facial analysis is really awesome if you are in your studio and you have time. When you got 3 minutes per person, you can't be moving lights around, and you can't, you just can't. You just don't have enough time. So I light mostly flat. I use it like a 1 to 1.5 kind of a ratio, and I try to do it in a way that's going to be as pleasing to the most amount of people. Now, if someone comes into my studio and I'm looking at their face, and I would go, okay, well, their nose hooks slightly to one side, so in order to make their nose straight, I'm going to put the light on the same side that the nose hooks to. And I also notice that they have big cheekbones and a small jaw, so I'm going to make sure not to shoot with the light too far overhead. I don't want to accentuate the cheekbones and make them look unnaturally larger than the jaw. And I might add a little edge light that'll highlight that jaw and make it pop out a little bit more to balance all that out.
You don't have to tell me all that if you'll just tell me where I can go read it.
Oh. The internet?
Yeah, they're full of crap.
Okay. I'll give
You think I've been like, this is like the bug in my brain for years. So if you think I haven't Googled it, you're wrong.
I didn't say that. I'm very rarely wrong about Google. No, what I would say that I would look into books then, if you can't find it on YouTube. There are lots and lots of photographers. Look for Monty Zucker, look for Frank Cricchio, look for the old masters, Don Blair. There's going to be a lot of books out there. I'm sure that Amherst Media probably has a whole library of them that you can get for like 10 cents a piece. But I would look for books that are going to really break it down and analyze it over. The general rule is what you've got sort of 3 lines. You've got line of the mouth, the line of the nose, and the line of the eyes. And the way that you line those up into which you create the angle is going to accentuate or decentuate different parts of the face. My general rule is I look at the eyes and the nose first. And so the eyes and the nose are, nobody's face, those lines are perfectly lined up. So what you want to do is if they're squished in this direction, you put that side of the face towards the camera. And if they're squished in the other direction, you put that side. And what it does is it evens out their features. And that's just a real quick general rule. The other is, if they look mostly symmetrical, most people's noses hook one way or the other, even a little bit. So I always try to straighten out the nose, because that's one thing I always notice. If you put the light on the same side the nose points to, you'll generally get a much straighter nose. But by default, if you're not sure, I just will happily shoot in the studio, not on jobs like this, but I will shoot both sides of their face and light from both sides. And if you do a little experimentation in your studio, while you're setting up, there's no harm if you got a light on wheels, put the main light here, roll it over here. Oh, go look at your camera and be like, oh my God, she looks like her best with the light from
Well,
the
I
side.
do that. And I know that the traditional posing is irrelevant in some ways, but it's really good to know the rules before you break them.
I agree.
And I do that, but I know that when you're watching these people walk in right after that somewhere, some part of your brain, you're looking at them and going, his left eye is smaller and slightly lower. So I probably ought to turn him this way and tilt his head. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I want to be able to think like that without having to work it out.
I understand. It's just putting it into practice. You just said pretty much half the rules. So it's just doing it over and over again until you don't think about it anymore. It's like asking somebody, could you please explain to me in verbally out loud how it is that you ride a bike?
I just wanted to know your thought process.
My thought process, I look at the eyes and the nose and the 3 lines. If the 3 lines converge on this side, that's the side that I think is their better side. However, there are other factors, medical conditions, blemishes, which way they wear their hair, So, I mean, it's just sort of like, mostly it's I go with, kind of start with the rules, and then I move them around until I like it.
Can I ask one more question? I'll
And
leave
then
you
you're
alone.
done, then you're cut
Yes,
off.
I got you. So, and I hate to backtrack, but this makes me crazy. You were talking about you always tilt the head to the back shoulder.
Not always, that's not what I
But
say.
that's the general.
That's
right?
often where I start, but
Okay.
I don't always do anything.
So where I get confused is when you start putting the high and low shoulder into play versus the back and the front. And somewhere in my brain it goes, oh shoot, somebody started with a bucket. I don't get it.
Be happy to explain it again, no problem. All right, Anthony, if you would. All right, face directly. When someone's facing the camera, neither shoulder is closer to or farther away. Can we agree if that's the camera angle?
I like this shot.
This is nice.
Very cute, guys.
Step-brothers. Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers hug. All right. So when you point someone in one direction or the other, you're going to bring one of those shoulders closer to the camera. And now we have what I like to call the camera shoulder and the far shoulder. We go this way. This is the camera shoulder, and this is the far shoulder.
And the camera shoulder's lower
Right.
and away is
It
higher.
depends on your camera angle. Depends completely on your camera angle. From down there, this could look higher, and you'd have to go like this to get it lower. And from up here, it's just everything depends on your relative position to the subject, always. But if the camera angle is right there, okay, and then let's just say that they're even, but one's closer. If I want to give him that sort of like caregiver pose, I'm going to bring the camera shoulder lower. And that's he's leaning in like he's listening,
Yes.
tilt the head to that shoulder, and that's a sympathetic look.
Yes.
Now, that's what I call the leaning in for a kiss,
Right.
right? You want more power, you shift the weight back the other way, and you give them the boxer stance. That is to say, you take the far shoulder and you lower it slightly compared to the other one. Put your fist up like a boxer. There you go. That's the boxer stance. That's powerful, and you lean that head away because you're a boxer, you don't get punched in the face. All right? Lean in for a kiss. You're a boxer. Lean in for a kiss. You're a boxer.
But you would never lean in for a kiss and pull the head back the other way.
Well, if you lean in for a kiss and put your head back the other way, there you go.
Get all neck.
Yeah, too much neck. That's the barbershop.
Okay.
I would probably go straight to the relative to the angle of his shoulders. And you don't necessarily, this gets too much, but you could do that sympathetic pose. You can lean a man in a little bit, lean that shoulder. But once you start to tilt that head too far this way, it gets into, and not only that, but if you're shooting into the neck, this is going to give all, and if he's wearing a collared shirt, that's just going to go up over the side. It's going to look terrible. So one of the reasons I tilt away a lot of times, and tilt the head away a lot of times, is because this takes the pressure off of a collared shirt so that you don't have that flapping up over the edges. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So again, it's what looks good. Make people look good, and if it works, it works. You got somebody with a skinny neck who's wearing a whatever, like just move people the way it looks good. But for somebody who's built like me and built like him, it's going to lean away, and I'm going to keep the neck wrinkles away from the collar, take the pressure off that way. The head tilt isn't necessarily to create visual interest for me, although it can. The head tilt exists for men in collared shirts to take their necks off the collar line. Does that make sense?
I never even thought of that.
Yeah, well, that's why we're all here. And then you give a little bit of lead that way. Boxer stance can be done, even is fine. That way is a little more cagey, but it can be a little tougher, a little more aggressive. And then this is going to be a little less aggressive. And think about it in terms of this is an aggressive-o-meter. Ready? We go, you with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really need this video from somebody.
Yeah.
There's gonna
You
be
really
a holiday.
just, and I know it can seem like, I know it can seem like a lot. It's head tilt and shoulder tilt, and you'll play with it. And I have and I'll email that out if you're on my list. I have a webinar that I recorded that's like headshot posing mistakes that explains that visually with examples and stuff. I'd be happy.
I've been on your list, 2 different accounts, so I'm like, I don't know how to get that stuff when I'm already on it.
Oh, then you're already on it. Then I will
So
send
it's
it.
gonna come out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's already out. I just got to send out a link to it. Okay.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you. Holy cow.
Can someone let me know how to get that video? If someone's
Are
got
you
a
on
good shot
Facebook?
of it?